Hello and welcome to lecturette number 3, the whole tone scale. This is the first non-diatonic scale that I'm going to be talking about, and really non-tonal scale. And this is a scale that I think is fairly familiar to a lot of people. So I'm going to start on C, and I'm just going to play in a... I gotta stop doing that. Here we go. And we'll go into the next measure and get back to C. So here are the notes of the whole tone scale. It's a scale consisting entirely of whole steps. And for this scale, if you haven't watched it yet, go back and watch the riveting lecturette number 1, where we talked about integer notation. I am going to label these notes right now using integer notation, right? So this was 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, T, 0. And when we do that, we can see very quickly one of the strengths of integer notation, whereas I could notate this a bunch of different ways. This scale, I could let's make it really bad. Something like, this. That would be the worst possible notation I could imagine. Looking at that scale quickly, it would be hard to really get a sense of what it is, and it would certainly be hard to even play it. But once you have those integer numbers, you notice that all of the numbers are even. And we are going to call this whole tone. We could call it whole tone even, but I am going to, for right now, call it whole tone 0. That's WT0. And what I'm going to do, let's get this back to some kind of normal notation. Now, one thing you'll notice with the whole tone scale is that because it divides the octave equally into 6 parts, it does not fit entirely comfortable with our 7-letter notational system, which is to say there's always going to be an uncomfortable interval somewhere along the way. So here I've notated it C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. That's all great. We see whole step to whole step to whole step. When I want to get back now to my first note, I have this diminished third interval, A sharp to C. Spelling usually with the whole tone scale is only a matter of convenience. And depending on the context, I might decide to spell this as B sharp, or I might have gone to flats at some point. It doesn't really matter. Whole tone is whole tone. And when it comes to, because it is a symmetrical scale, when it comes to unique content, there is really only one other version of the whole tone scale. And what I mean by that is, if I take this, here's my scale. I'm reaching, so I got to play it an octave lower. If I started on D, it's not only the same exact content, but the same intervallic relationships. It sounds exactly the same. And in fact, you'll notice that if I just take this little excerpt, and I know I'm going below the window that you can see, but I'm going to transpose chromatically up a major second. And now I have a horribly spelled version of this scale, and I have to change my little annotations here, but 2, 4, 6, 8, T, everybody's favorite spelling of 0, B sharp, and everybody's absolute favorite spelling of integer 2, which is C double sharp. So you'll see what happens is that while I have changed technically the order, the intervallic structure remains the same because it's a series of whole steps, and the content remains the same. And this is going to be true if I transpose this scale by any even number of semitones, right? So what I just did was T2 of the original scale, and if I did T4 or T6 or T8, we would wind up with a scale that was the same, and I will never call this scale whole tone 2 or whole tone 4 or whole tone 6. I'm always going to call it whole tone 0. So one way to remember that maybe is to say WT0 is the scale that is the the whole tone scale that contains 0. Now, if I scroll a little bit over here and I want to let's try starting on D flat. I never learn, so what I'm going to do is just transpose the whole thing when I'm done. There we go. Now, to make this a little more legible, I can take it and bring it up the octave. So here is the whole tone scale starting on 1, right? And again, I've got 1, and E flat is 3, 5, G is 7. If you've skipped the integer notation lecturette and you're not familiar with this, go back and take a look at that. It's right here on the YouTube channel. E and back to 1. And as you might guess, we're going to call this whole tone 1. And any transposition of this scale by, in fact, an even number. So if I do T2, which is to transpose the whole thing up by a major second, T2, 2 semitones, is going to get me the same collection of notes. Again, the spelling is going to be a little weird. Now it's E flat, F, G, A, B, C sharp, E flat. There's a really ugly looking diminished third. And of course I would need to change if I'm labeling these integers. This would be 3, 5, 7, 9, E1, and 3. And I can go in and spell this. I can even spell it like this. So here it's a D sharp, here it's an E flat, but everything looks like a whole step. So again, spelling in a scale like this is largely a function of readability and context. Whichever note it starts on, in this case it starts on note 3, but the scale is whole tone 1. So whole tone 0, whole tone 1. The whole tone is a really cool scale. We'll hear it a lot in the music of Debussy. We hear it anytime there's a little dream sequence on TV. It was only a dream. So, not the most inspired dream music. And we will talk more about the whole tone scales, but the things to remember are it's a scale with only whole tones. There are 2, whole tone 0, which contains C, and whole tone 1, which contains C sharp or D flat integer 1. Hope you enjoyed this lecturette, and I'll see you soon.